Hello, welcome to another episode of the Oracle Laura Show. My name is Oracle Laura. I have a very special guest today. Today we're going to be talking about aliens. We're also going to be talking about a few other things such as paranormal. As you know, I'm a psychic and a medium. So we're going to be talking a lot about the paranormal and ghosts. But I would like to talk today mainly about the aliens. That's a really popular topic, and today we have such a great guest for that. Now he has been on let's see, the History Channel on Ancient Aliens. That was recently. You may have caught that episode. If not, make sure that after the show you watch that. Again, that was the History Channel's Ancient Aliens. He's also been on Travel Channel. As you know, you might know that I've been on Travel Channel, so it's quite a great honor to have another guest on here who's been on the Travel Channel. Now, he's been on that for the Alaska Triangle. Now, that's an interesting topic we're going to be talking about today because, as you know, it's more common to know about the Bermuda Triangle, but there's actually a triangle in Alaska. So we're going to be talking about that today as well. And he's been on this Discoveries, Fright, Love. So he's been on some great shows. He's also a publisher. He has many books. We're going to be talking about his books. He is the CEO of Haunted Road Media. Please welcome my very special guest, Mike Ricksecker. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. So I would love to talk, first of all, let's talk about the most recent one that you've done, which is the Ancient Aliens. Can you tell us all about that?
Yeah, absolutely. This was really kind of a last minute thing that popped up in January. They had filmed an episode on the Shadow People and how they may actually, or at least some of them may actually be extraterrestrials. And I guess whatever they had originally done for that show, they wanted to take it in a little bit of a different direction. So they had me fly out to LA and they interviewed me for a day on a lot of different topics concerning shadow people, shadow entities, how they may relate to extraterrestrial activity, the history behind these types of entities, and what have you. And it turned into this really fascinating show that just aired last week, and I guess they re-aired it last night because a lot of people contacted me again last night that, hey, I'm seeing you on Ancient Aliens. So it's definitely a really fascinating topic when it comes to the shadow entities because they can be a lot of different things, and we touched on a lot of those different topics during the episode.
That's a good point. Yeah, I want to say that myself as soon as you said that, because I know like a lot of people who have seen shadows and shadow people, and they're always thinking, well, is it a ghost? Is it a demon? And so your concept is the possibility that might actually be an alien. So that's another, a complete different option, on whether that. So what do you feel? Do you feel that the majority of them would be aliens, or maybe just a few of them, like certain ones?
That's a great question. In my book, A Walk in the Shadows, A Complete Guide to Shadow People, I dive into a lot of different possibilities as to what they may be. So some of them I believe are just human spirits that can't fully manifest as an apparition. In fact, I've seen that with my own eyes where I've seen a shadow morph into an apparition. Some of them, yes, I do believe many of them are extraterrestrials. They could be using some sort of cloaking device that doesn't quite adhere to our eyes. Maybe they don't quite understand the physiology of our eyes and comes off more like a shadow, or if they're traveling through unconventional means, not like a Newtonian way where, we shoot a spaceship off in our direction and they land physically. They may be using some other means or forms of travel, whether that's through light or interdimensionally. And I do believe many extraterrestrials or shadow entities are interdimensional beings, and some of our extraterrestrials could be as well. They may be kind of one of the same thing, interdimensional extraterrestrials. They could be astral projections where we're getting a glimpse of that energy in our room. If somebody's astral projecting into the room, they could be light beings actually. So these could be a lot of different things.
I like that you've mentioned energy because that's a very good point. Not everybody understands that there are different forms of energy, and so even when you see a spirit, you might not see, well, because they no longer have that body. They're not actually, they may be still associated with that body, but they don't have the physical body anymore. So they may show themselves sort of like a foggy mist, and they might have almost like a mere reflection of that previous body they had, or they could be just like a mist or a shadow, like you said. You can't always assume that. Well, people are just so used to the TV shows. They're used to the concept that for the audience, for the viewers to understand that that's a spirit and who it is, they have to show the body of the person. But like I said, as a medium myself, when I'm working with spirits, I always have to remember, well, I'm seeing it, what they call the third eye. I'm seeing an image, almost like a vision in my mind of that person, and I might see what they look like, but physically in front of me, they're not really there, right? That body, you
Right.
can't actually touch them. They're not going to actually be able to even maybe touch you. They are in another dimension. And the way some spirits have explained it to me is one of my spirit guides, he had me go into my bathroom and turn off the light and close the door, and it was all dark. And he goes, "Now, can you see me?" And I'm like, "Well, I can sort of see a vision of you in my mind, but I can't see you because it's all dark in here." And he goes, "Well, that's the way we see you also.
Hmm.
You are a bright light in this darkness, so we see you. Otherwise, all we see is black. So we see darkness, and then when there's someone who can sort of be in tune with their dimension, they're able to see like the white light within that darkness."
Yeah, that's really fascinating, and I've heard many times that to spirit psychic mediums appear as a beacon of light, and so yeah, there's this whole fascinating world around us that we can't see with our eyes. Our eyes can only sees into a limited spectrum of light, and so and that'll happen a lot of times. We did not cover this on the show, but uh, a lot of times people will report seeing something out of the corner of their eye, and they turn and look, and it's like it vanished. But our our periphery sees more light than straight on. It has to do with the rods and cones in your eyes, where the cones are more toward the center of your eye, and the rods are toward the sides, and the rods are the part of the eye that take in more light. So you might be seeing something out of the corner of your eye. You turn and look, and it seems to you like it vanished, but it really didn't. It's still there because you're seeing into a little bit of a different light spectrum.
I like that you've mentioned that because I have peripheral, but I haven't really studied it. I don't know how it works. So that was very interesting to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a technique called averted vision that stargazers will use, when it's very, very dark at night and they want to glimpse celestial objects, that they will actually use this technique called averted vision to see out of the side of their eye so they can see whether it's a comet or, maybe it's some, hard to glimpse constellation or something like that.
So when I'm stargazing, I should be turning sideways and looking.
Yeah, kind of try to look out the side of your eye.
Oh
It's a little
wow!
challenging, but
Well,
people do that. Yeah,
well, I'm willing to learn it because I love learning new things. So that's cool. Okay, so I'm gonna try that next time and see what
there you
happens.
go.
So let's talk a bit about how you got started in this. I read that you had seen a shadow person when you were a young boy, when you were a child.
Yeah, I've seen several shadow entities throughout my life. The one of the most significant occurrences was when I was about 8 years old. I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was this tall, dark figure standing in the corner of my room. Of course, at that time, I had no idea about shadow people, shadow beings, anything like that. I just thought there was an intruder in the house. Somebody had broken in, and they were about to kill me because that's what you think at 8 years old.
Yeah.
I'd seen enough television at that point. I figured I had enough time to gasp, and that was it. I was a goner. Fortunately, I'm still alive to tell the tale, which is great. But it did do something very unusual. It did get physical with me. And what it did is it approached my bed, and I'm trying to scream. My mouth opens up, and nothing's coming out because I'm just too terrified. and it leans over. I'm staring up into this face that's just blank. There's no eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing. It's just blank and black. And it grabbed me by the wrists, crossed my arms across my body, and then ran off down the hall, of all places, into a closet. At that point, I found my voice, found my legs, ran off screaming to my parents' bedroom. And, they're very nice parents. They're trying to console me, calm me down, trying to tell me that I just had a bad dream. But I had been awake for this entire experience. So fast forward 5 years, we're moving into another house. And, at the previous house, that was the only incident with this shadow entity. I would never call it like a haunted house. This was only a one-time event. But at this new house that we moved into, I'm unpacking boxes, putting things away, and I kept seeing something standing in the doorway to my bedroom. And I turn and look, and it would go running off down the hall. And this happened several times over the course of several days. I'd be unpacking boxes, putting things away, and this person would be standing in my doorway. Uh, Different than, it was shadowy in nature, but different than the previous one where the other one was, very, very solid. This one was more translucent in nature and very fast. And after this happened several times over these days, I asked my mom about it. I said, "Hey, mom, I've been seeing this." And I was older at the time. I was about 13 years old. I'd been seeing this, in my doorway, in the hallway. Have you seen this? And she actually said that she had seen it as well. And she wasn't very concerned about it. She was kind of nonchalant about her approach. So it was great on a couple of fronts in that one, it affirmed what I had been seeing, so I wasn't crazy. And two, if mom wasn't alarmed about it, then I didn't have anything to worry about. She's not alarmed, then I don't need to be alarmed. And so I got playful with this thing and started calling him Tom, like peeping Tom, because he kept peeping in my room. And anytime I'd see him, I'd say, "Hi, Tom," and he'd take off running. So those were my first two major shadow experiences. Both of them is very, very different.
Now, do you think your mom was doing that possibly to make you not afraid the way she responded, or do you think she was nonchalant about it because she's so used to it herself, and maybe that's how you ended up with that ability as well?
My mom has seen things over the years. She used to not admit those sorts of things, but I think over the years, especially as I've kind of dug into this research, and I guess I've made the family a little more accustomed to it. She started admitting more to different things that she had seen and experienced over the years, especially this one house that my parents had been living in for about 25 years after I'd graduated high school, and they built a new house out in the country. Um, she kept witnessing Native American spirits there. And so that was kind of interesting that she started becoming a little bit more forthcoming about her experiences. So, yeah, I think my mom's an intuitive, but just hasn't ever really explored it.
Sort of same as my mom. Like she never really talked about it, but I knew that she had the more so the mediumship. But it wasn't like she talked about it. Whereas my dad, he talked about his mom being psychic and how I'm psychic, and that's where I got it from, and he had it. He was more willing to talk about it, and he even used my abilities as when I was a child. Um, on at our home, we used it for certain things on the homeland. But my mom, yeah, she never talked about it. I don't know if she ever really accepted it. Yeah, I think it sort of bothered her more so. But my dad was okay about it. He thought it was cool.
Yeah, my dad's funny, because he doesn't really believe in a lot of this. And for a long, long time, he would say, "I don't believe in ghosts." And my mom would say, "Your dad believes, he's just never going to admit it." But anytime he talked to me, he'd be like, "I don't believe in that stuff." But there was this one day, he was telling me this story about how he had woken up in the middle of the night, and there was this tall, dark figure, basically a shadow person, that had walked into the room. And he basically cursed the thing out and told it to get out of the room, and off it went. And he tells me this story. I'm like, "Dad, that's a ghost story." He's like, "Nah." So it's funny, even when he's telling me a story of an experience that he's had, he will deny it.
maybe that explains why she didn't talk so much about it then.
Probably.
Yeah, so I grew up with it, so but it wasn't something we sat around talking about at the dinner table all the time, It was just sort of like an acceptance, like everybody knew, but it wasn't like it was a major topic of the day all the time. Well, let's talk about how they travel. Now, what's your belief in how they travel, the aliens?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different methods here. One, they could very well be using a physical craft to travel here and enter our airspace. You'll land on the ground and explore. Um, whether they do that through conventional means, which would take, at least to us, what seems like it would take many, many years. So perhaps they've perfected some sort of way to live longer lives, or perhaps they're using some sort of method to travel very fast, like using a wormhole or something like that. Maybe they figured out the whole Einstein-Rosen bridge, and they're using that sort of technology to travel great distances in a short period of time. I think many are traveling interdimensionally, that they have figured out a way to be able to cross those dimensions, or even through time. I think a lot of, especially like the shadows, I think a lot of shadows are time slips, or they could outright be time travelers. Some of these things that we believe may actually be, or that we believe are extraterrestrial in nature, may actually be some sort of time traveler, or they could even be an extraterrestrial time traveler. So there's a lot of different methods they could be using to come into our space. There's even the idea, we talk about, the human being able to astral project and explore and visit different locations. And I would believe that in an extraterrestrial civilization that has perhaps even been around longer than humanity, that's quite intelligent, has also figured out how to project their consciousness across the cosmos. So some of these entities that we could be witnessing could just be projections, astral projections of extraterrestrial entities.
Well, what's your opinion then on how I predict the future? Do you feel that I'm time traveling?
So that's a great question, because I personally don't believe time really exists. Time is a human construct that we use to describe our reality and our existence here. We use it for the seasons, when to plant crops, that sort of thing. But I believe that every moment that has happened, is happening, and will happen is all concurrent. So you could take all those moments and stack them up on top of each other. And I think it's a matter of just being able to access those right moments. Like when we see what we would call a time slip, where all of a sudden you get a vision of the place that you're at, but all of a sudden the decor looks different, or you're seeing people from another point in time, and some of them even look at you like you're the ghost. Um, in those moments, I think what's happening is they are resonating at the same frequency in the same moment, so we're able to get a glimpse. And so I think when people are able to predict the future, and I've had like at night when I dream, somehow I tap into this a bit where I'll get a premonition. I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but I'll get an idea of something that will happen at some point. I think we're connecting with that frequency and that wavelength of that other moment in time, and we're able to get a glimpse of it in our minds.
One spirit explained it to me. He said that I go in between the intervals. What does he mean by interval?
I mean, the intervals of the wavelengths. I mean, that could be,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I was asking him, like how it works and whether it's like a wormhole, and he goes, well, you're in between intervals. So I remember researching it when I woke up, and there's intervals in music and there's intervals in
Yeah.
sounds, and I was trying to figure out how I can well, not manipulate it, that would be the wrong word, but how I can control it, so that I can use it, so that I can um, plan where I want to be and at what time and where. I want to be able to not just be sent there when I'm sleeping. I mean, obviously, when I'm asleep or when I'm awake and I'm seeing it in a vision, and when I'm being shown something, there's a reason why they need to show it to me at that location at that time. So obviously, I don't want you to interfere in that, but I might want to go somewhere and being able to. I mean, look at the power that the great things that we could do if we can maneuver it like a vehicle, like okay, like a spaceship. If we can maneuver it and say, okay, I want to be here at a certain time. What do you know about astrolabes?
Right.
Like if you can manipulate it like an astrolabe and you can determine where you want to be at a certain time, then you have that time traveler's ability. You have what they show in the movies, they like 12 monkeys. You're trying to access a certain time and a certain location and you need to be there. I'd love to be able to have that kind of ability to fine tune it, more
Yeah,
detail.
absolutely. Yeah, I think when we finally really truly discover true time travel, I think it's going to have a lot more to do with consciousness than something mechanical. It's not going to be a DeLorean and a flux capacitor like out of Back to the Future. I think it's going to be more like if you remember the movie Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve and
Love
Jane
that movie.
Seymour. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that movie where he basically wills his consciousness
yeah.
into another point in time. I think it's going to be more like that.
Well, I've been able to do that. I've been able. I work with the police and I work with missing persons, and I remember missing persons asked me if I could dream about a particular person that I willed to, like, if I wanted to. And I said, well, I never tried that before. That was like years ago. And so I did try it and it did work. And they said I was right about 12 things, so that
Oh,
confirmed that, yes, that was the person I was dreaming about. So yeah, we can will it and we can make it happen. But there's a very important thing. If you've ever seen the movie Paradox with, I believe that was with Cheryl Ladd, I don't know if we can actually change the future because what I find is if I've seen it, then it's already happened in the future. We're in the
right.
past. Our present is the past. So I'm seeing the future. I'm already there. I'm witnessing it. It's happened. So it would be a paradox to think that we could try to change that outcome. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think concepts like that are fascinating. And there's a modern television show. It was on Netflix called Dark, where they explore the idea of the future manipulating the past, and that it's this recurring cycle that that you can't really change it because it's already happened. So it's fascinating concepts to think about.
Because the other question that we have to get into, if that was possible, if you could time travel, well, you could go to the same spot possibly again, can't you? Would you be able to keep redoing it over and over and over and changing the outcome? Sort of like the butterfly effect.
Yeah, that's a fascinating question, and it makes you wonder. Yeah, about things like the butterfly effect or the Mandela effect. Is this why we have memories of something that we swear happened, but you look at the historical account and it didn't? But yet all these different people have the same type of memory of something having occurred, and so it's have these things already happened to us that we've already experienced?
And we'd want to be careful who had that ability, wouldn't we?
Yeah. We would, yes, we would want to be careful who has that
We,
ability and
we
power, because
won't
that would be
name
very
names,
powerful.
but I'm sure we could
Right,
think of a few people we don't want them to have that ability.
right, exactly.
So let's talk about the Bermuda Triangle versus the Alaska Triangle. I have to admit, I don't know everything. I'm not like this genius robot. I don't know everything, and so I never heard of the Alaska Triangle before. So I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, the Alaska Triangle, it's pretty much just like the Bermuda Triangle, but in Alaska. In fact, a lot of people refer to it as Alaska's Bermuda Triangle. But these triangle areas are really all over the world. Bermuda, of course, is the most popular, the most well known, but not really the oldest. Dragon Triangle out in Japan seems to be the one with some of the oldest historic accounts of strange phenomena happening within it. Uh, but but yeah, basically these triangle areas of the world, they have these strange anomalies, strange electromagnetic fields. Compasses go wild there. You have a lot of disappearances, whether it's missing airplanes, missing boats, people. You have a lot of UFO activity in these areas. Uh, Strange paranormal phenomena. So a lot of strange behavior happening in these areas. And something that really heightens the Alaska Triangle, yes, it has the strange magnetic anomalies that are kicking off a lot of this activity, but the land up there is very volatile as well. You have a lot of earthquakes and a lot of volcanic activity up there. Of course, it's further up north where the Earth's magnetic protection is thinner, and that's why we see the aurora borealis up there. You get the solar flares off the sun that smack right into that region. That's really amping this up as well. So you have uh, all of this electromagnetic activity that's occurring up there, and then all of these strange occurrences that happen there as well. So again, much like the Bermuda Triangle, but occurring in Alaska.
Do you think it's possible that it has anything to do with the alignments of the stars, the locations?
Um, I mean, a lot of our ancient sites of power have those different astronomical alignments. So I mean, that could have some bearing into all of this. What is interesting about Alaska is we don't really see those typical sites like whether it's a Stonehenge or the pyramids or what have you, because it's so far up north. You just don't have those types of ancient sites of power. But it seems like the same type of phenomenon and energy is there that you would normally see. Just people haven't built those types of sites there.
So how do you explain, like I have electromagnetism, and I notice it might not be just in my hands, but I notice it a lot in my hands. I affect street lights. If I walk by, they go off, or I can touch them and make them go on, and I affect computers and batteries a lot.
Mhm.
My friends have witnessed it. If they have trouble with their computer or if the remote control or anything to do with electrical, they usually have me touch it or do something, and some kind of not like voodoo, but like flip. And then all of a sudden it works, and they're like, "Oh my God, like what is it? What is it about you?" So electromagnetism, I don't know. I was thinking that might be a possibility with those locations. It might just because you mentioned electromagnetism,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, and it sounds like a person like you would probably be even more affected up there. We each have a toroidal field of energy that surrounds us that extends out several feet, and depending on the person, this may extend out further. It may be stronger. The Heart Math Institute has done a lot of fascinating work on this subject. So yeah, everybody's a little bit different, and you may be one who's a little bit more affected up there in Alaska.
what was the institute you mentioned?
The Heart Math Institute.
And what do they do? Is that like psychic research?
Yeah, they do a lot of well, it's a lot of biological research, but they have a fascinating paper. It's almost like a small book. It's free on their website. You can look it up, or I have the link in my or the reference in my book, A Walk in the Shadows. But it's a fascinating paper on the energy that emanates. Basically, it centers from our heart and extends outward in a toroidal field that surrounds us. So they in their examinations, they were looking at basically when we sense another person come into a room and how we feel, without even hearing them, that, okay, somebody else is in the room with me. So they did a lot of experiments and examinations between other people. They also did this between people and their pets. So it's really fascinating.
That sort of reminds me, of a game we used to play in school, of course, that I excelled at, but it was called 7 Up.
Yeah.
And you put your head down and your thumb up or something, and there's so many people at the front. They have to come by everybody and they have to touch you, and then they stand back at the front. You put your head up, and you're supposed to guess who touched you. And I could always do it. I always knew which person touched me, and it freaked everybody out that I always got good at that. But I remember loving that game. It was so fun.
That was fun. I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think electromagnetism might also be why I have like a built-in, what I call a sonar? Like you wouldn't need equipment with me on a ship to go out onto the water. I could find a shipwreck below without even needing that sonar equipment. I would just sense it, you know. Is
Yeah.
that also electromagnetism, the sonar?
Yeah, I mean that's a form of it. So you know, we've created electronic equipment for that, you know, to send a signal, you know, outward. And basically what the way that works, we send the signal outward, it hits the object, reflects back, and then we pick up that reflection. Dolphins have this ability. They have actually more powerful sonar than we have created as you know, human technology, which is absolutely fascinating. So yeah, you could very well have something like that going on.
Now you were mentioning earlier, you mentioned that institute, and you mentioned they have, you know, enough information like a book. So getting on the topic of books here, you have written some books yourself. Do you have those with you?
Yeah, I have two of them here. The bookshelf back there has all of them. I've written 12 to date. So the latest is Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. That came out this past October and kind of piggybacked off of the Alaska Triangle television show that I was a part of. And then the other book that Ancient Aliens just featured here is A Walk in the Shadows, a complete guide to shadow people.
And that's the one that you're really well known for, isn't it? I've seen a lot of, when
Yeah.
I researched you, that kept coming up.
Yeah, it's well, and I've done a lot on that subject. So that book has been out for 2 years now, but predating that, I I had a lot of videos that I had out on YouTube, but I also have a docu-series out right now called The Shadow Dimension. It's running free on Tubi TV right now, so people can go and watch that. It's a 6-part docu-series where going to locations and exploring this type of phenomenon to see, you know, what exactly is powering these different shadow entities? What are we experiencing here? And is it related to, you know, kind of like the Alaska Triangle, is it related to this vortex energy that's kind of welling up out of the ground and supercharging some of these areas?
So hold up your book again, if you don't mind, the
Yeah.
last one. Where can people find that book?
They could find it on my website, MikeRicksecker.com, or just go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You can always find it there as well.
Great, awesome. So what's your upcoming projects? What have you got coming up next?
Yeah, a lot of things I'm working on. So, second season of The Shadow Dimension is currently in production. My next book is Connecting the Universe, which is the name of my podcast as well, Connecting the Universe. I run a website, an online learning platform called the connecteduniverseportal.com. So the podcast is tied into that, but you know, we do weekly classes, and I have a bunch of behind the scenes videos, articles, monthly Q&A videos, a whole bunch of information within that portal. And also doing a lot with tours. We have a tour to Ireland coming up this summer. It's July 1st through the 9th. There's only a couple tickets left. Next February, we have a tour to Egypt. And then next summer, 2023, we're doing an Alaska cruise. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
You know, when I was getting my set here ready, I wanted something to reflect the
Mhm.
space and stars because of the aliens. So I chose this necklace. I chose this, and I have a spirit guide, one in particular, and he kept insisting on this pillow. And I didn't understand why. I was like, well, okay, there's some connections between the Egyptians and the theory, you know, that they had contact with the aliens. So I thought maybe that's why he wanted it. And he kept saying, no, it's more than that. So you were saying that you're going to do a tour in Egypt. So now I know.
Yeah, no, I had a lot going on with Egypt, and actually both of those pillows called to me because the one that has the sun and the moon and the stars. That one is very similar to a design that we had for a motif in my youngest son's bedroom when he was a baby. We had that design, and then of course the Egypt. Yeah, and even in A Walk in the Shadows, I dive into the connections that, or at least the beliefs that the Egyptians had about shadow people and shadow entities, where to them, they had 7 different parts of the soul, and one of those was the shadow. And while the other parts of the soul went on to the constellation of Orion at death, the shadow part of the show of the soul, the Kabit, as they called it, would stay here on Earth to roam around. So that's, yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I wanted to discuss the alignment of the stars when we're talking about, the location of the triangles, because I know quite a bit about Orion. And
Okay.
the reason why is because I was raised Rosicrucian. I mean, my mother was
Oh, wow.
Catholic. Her mom, before her, was really devout Catholic. And my father, his family were Freemasons. And so he started to get into the Rosicrucian thing when I was very young. And, he started off, we went to Christian church for a bit and he got really tired of it. And he decided to go back to, sort of more of the occult type, independent religion. And I remember him taking me to San Jose. They have an Egyptian museum, the Rosicrucian. They have a museum and they had an exhibit of a mummy. And it was my first time I ever saw a mummy before. I thought that was, kind of freaky. And I remember it was really old. But growing up with the thing about Egypt so much, I ended up getting quite interested in it. Not as much as my father had at the time, but he never really explained to me why they used me in the rituals until someone explained to me many years later when I was an adult. They said, well, do you know, the relevance of your birthday? And I said, well, it's my birthday. That's kind of relevant. But other than that, no. And they said, well, you're born on September the 8th. And that is the birthday of goddess Isis of Egypt.
Ah.
And I thought, well, that's interesting. My dad never told me that, but he would have known all about that being a Rosicrucian. So I always thought, well, maybe that was why it was so important that he kept me. When my parents divorced, he went out of his way to keep me, and I ended up being, all the stuff about Rosicrucian was thrown on me and being used in the ritual. I thought, well, that was interesting because I was the only child allowed in the ritual. There's all these other
Interesting.
kids. Yeah, there were all these other kids there. There was a huge amount of people that were invited. And I remember I was the only one allowed in the ritual where we built this pyramid out of rocks in the forest. And I didn't at the time have a clue what they were doing and why we were doing it. But being the only kid allowed in it, I didn't understand. So Orion, I know a lot about. I know about the Sirius stars. I know that they form the figure 8.
Right.
Or the stars, that Sirius A and B, I believe it is. I don't know if you know a lot about it, but they rotate around each other and they form the infinity symbol. And that's why the infinity symbol is so important.
Yeah, there's so many fascinating things about Orion and then the Sirius stars. Of course, the alignment of the pyramids to Orion, and then the Dogon tribe knowing of Sirius B when we didn't even know about that for so long, and it was part of their culture for thousands of years. How did they know about that? And so that's where a lot of people believe the extraterrestrials came into play, that they had shared this knowledge with the people on Earth. So all of that is really fascinating.
I remember being in chapters and I found a book that was written by an archaeologist couple, and they had gone to Egypt. They wanted to research the hieroglyphs, and they actually had found the hieroglyphs that had aliens in them. Have you ever seen those?
Well, I've seen like the Temple of Abydos. They have the lintel at the top that has these strange, what almost look like modern day depictions of one looks like a tank, one looks like a helicopter. There's one that does look like a spaceship. So you see these different symbols that kind of make you scratch your head. And there's one that Looks like a little UFO. It's actually in a it's in a tomb. Oh, where was that? Was that, I think it was at Saqqara. I was just in Egypt last June, so going back in February, so it's going to be great to follow up. Yeah, I think that was a tomb in Saqqara, where it looks like a little UFO. So yeah, it's fascinating. Some of these hieroglyphs that kind of make you wonder. Okay, what were they? What were they actually witnessing and trying to to give us as far as information? So yeah, I love Egypt.
After Travel Channel had me on their show, just when we're almost finished wrapping up filming, the female producer came up to me and said, this was supposed to be the last episode for the season, but because of you, uh, the host wants to do a couple more episodes. And I'm like, oh, really? Why? I was so curious to hear, like, what did I say? What did I do to influence that? And she goes, well, you were talking all about your birthday, about, being associated with
Mhm.
goddess Isis, like Brother Twelve's woman had been. She was always saying she was an incarnate of goddess Isis. And I thought, well, that's a weird coincidence for them to have me here. And she said, yeah, because of you, he's decided to do 2 more episodes. So later I was all intrigued. I wanted to find out, what was it? What was it? What was it about? And it turned out he was doing one on the queens of Egypt.
Oh wow, that's fascinating.
So I felt kind of, happy that I inspired them that way. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Is there anything before we wrap up today? Is there anything you would like to say to your fan?
Just I always appreciate the support and how wonderful everybody has been over the years. I couldn't be doing a lot of what I do without all the support involved, and I just you know all the information that I keep researching and putting into the books or the television shows, the docuseries, and all that. I just my hope is for people to pass that on and keep it going to the next generation, because I can't take the books and all this with me. So please pass that on to the next generation. And again, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the Oracle Laura show.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. This has been fun.
Great. Bye bye.
Bye bye.